Hi everyone, and welcome to Lab 8 for the Virtual Infrastructure course. We have a few tasks in this lab. The first one is to look at existing virtual networks. The second is to create a new virtual switch. And then the third is to move our virtual machines to that new virtual switch and make sure that our communications is behaving the way that we want. So let's get started. I've already logged into my student workstation. I've also logged into VCSA using the web interface with the root account at the standard screen, as you can see here. Also, we're going to need the virtual machines powered up. So I've powered up VM1 and that one's ready to go as well. So in task one, we want to take a look at the existing virtual switches. I'm going to pick on the host and clusters view. And I'm going to pick on one of my hosts. So I'll pick ESXi1. You're going to have to do this with both of yours. I'm going to select Manage. And Networking tab is already selected. So if we look at the virtual switches, we see that there's one virtual switch at this time. And if I look down at the bottom here, you can see that we have one virtual switch. It has a VM network, which is going to handle virtual machines, virtual interfaces. So here's my VM connected into that network at this point in time. We can see that that's connected out, and therefore this VM could communicate out through the physical interface. Let's scroll down here just a touch, and we'll see that we also have a management network. So this is the IP that we actually connect in and communicate with the host. And the task one, it's pretty much that simple. Now for task two, we're going to create a new virtual switch that we're going to use only for connecting virtual machines. And this is a pretty standard practice. We normally don't use this VM network that was set up by default because our management interface here is only used for management traffic. So very often what people will do is once they've got their VM virtual switches set up, they will actually get rid of this VM network. Now to create a new virtual switch, we select this icon here, which is going to be Add Networking. That's going to launch one of our typical wizards. We have a number of different things that we can do. We're going to be looking at adding kernel ports later on. For now, we're going to add a virtual machine port group for a standard switch. I'll select that and go next. We now have the ability to add a port group either to an existing switch, such as the way it's selected by default, or we can create a new virtual switch. So I'm going to create a new vSwitch, and I can optionally select an uplink adapter if I want to be able to communicate outside of the host. In this case, we do want external communications, so we need to take one of those NICs that's actually part of the hardware and connect it to the virtual switch for an uplink. So I'm going to assign an adapter. I have a list of adapters available. As per the lab document, we're going to take VMNIC1, the ones that is selected by default, and say OK. You'll see that this is active. Later on, we'll talk about if we have multiple NICs, whether we have multiple active so we can do load balancing, if we have active passive for fault tolerance. We'll get there in a little bit. I've selected my one and only network interface that I need. I'll say next. I need to provide a name for the port group. So we're going to call this production. It's very important that you type this accurately. This has to be the same on all of your different hosts. Otherwise, VMs will not be able to communicate with each other from one host to the next. Also notice we have the option of specifying a VLAN. We're not going to do that. We're just going to use the standard VLAN. But we can assign a VLAN ID to the port group. And what that would mean is on the uplink, all the traffic would be tagged so that we can segregate between different port groups and therefore different VLANs on the vSwitch. I'll go through and finish. In a second here, the new vSwitch will be completed. We can see the progress over on the right-hand side, which has gone a grand total of 0% so far, and immediately to 100%. And here's our new vSwitch now that's been created. And for some reason, we are stuck on the refresh. There we go. Not sure why that went back to getting started. I'll pick my host. And again, with networking, with vSwitches, we will see that there are two. Here's my new one, vSwitch 1. If I select that, then we'll see that right now we've got production is the name of the port group. We do not have any virtual machines at this point in time, and this is connected to VMNIC1, which is our physical NIC that's on the host. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to take that VM that we've got and we're going to move it so that it's no longer on that original port group. Instead, we're going to connect it to the production port group. So as a result, I'm going to go over to my VMs and templates view. And here's my VM here. So I will bring up the settings for that VM. And once those are on the screen, I'm going to take the network adapter, which is right now on the VM network. I'll click on the drop down and I'm going to put that on the production port group. And then I will say, okay, that's good. Oops. I guess I have to click instead of hitting enter. We can see in the progress that it's changing the VM settings. And now that that's done, I'll select the VM. And in the summary tab, we can see that the network adapter is on the production port group. Now let's find out if that works. I'm going to go up here to my VM and I'm going to bring up a command prompt. I already logged into this guy as administrator. It seems to be not responding for some reason. Let me send it a Control-Alt-Delete. No, that's fine. There we go. Bring up a command prompt. If I do ipconfig, this is already changed because I changed the network. Now you may have to do an ipconfig release and an ipconfig renew to get that changed. When we started off, this was on the 192.168.70 network, which is our NAT network. The network we're on now is bridged. That's where that VMNIC1 went. So this is now an IP address from the same network as what our host is connected to. This particular network happens to be the one that I've got at home because that's where I'm recording this. For you, this is going to be the network that is part of the class lab. So under those circumstances, if you were to look at this IP address, you should find that you're going to have an IP address that matches that of your workstation. And that's basically it for this lab. So hopefully this was helpful for you, and we'll see you next time.